In this video, we're going to look at how the British Empire, one of the largest empires in history, came to be. Now, it's important to say that the British Empire wasn't created in a day. It was the result of centuries of conquest, colonization, and political unions. So let's take a journey back in time and see how it all began. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay notified about our latest videos. The story begins, a nation forged. The history of the British Kingdom goes back much further than the Empire. To understand how the Empire came to be, we need to start at the beginning of the British story. Thousands of years ago, the island of Britain was home to various Celtic tribes. Then, in 43 CE, the Roman invaders led by Emperor Claudius conquered the island and made it a part of their vast empire. They called this new territory Britannia. The Romans ruled over Britain for almost 400 years, bringing with them their language, culture, and legal system. However, as the Roman Empire declined, they lost control over their far-flung territories. By the 5th century, the Roman army withdrew from Britain, leaving the island defenseless. After the Romans left, waves of people from mainland Europe started arriving in Britain. The first of these newcomers were the Anglo-Saxons, a mix of tribes from what is now Denmark and northern Germany. They settled in the lowlands of the island and established several independent kingdoms. Some of the most powerful of these early kingdoms included Wessex in the southwest, Mercia in the middle, and Northumbria in the north. Each of these Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had its own king and its own laws. They fought each other for land and power for many years. Then in the 8th century, another group of invaders arrived in Britain, the Vikings. These fierce warriors from Scandinavia raided and settled along the coasts of Britain. The Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons clashed in battle for decades, but as the 9th century progressed, the Anglo-Saxons fought back, pushing the Vikings back to the north and forcing them to pay tribute. One Anglo-Saxon king, Alfred the Great, played a pivotal role in repelling the Viking attacks. He expanded the Kingdom of Wessex and laid the foundations for a unified England. By the 10th century, the small Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had merged to form a loose confederation, the Kingdom of England under King Aethelstan. Aethelstan's victory over the Scots, the Welsh and the Vikings at the Battle of Brunanburh in 937 made him the dominant ruler in all of England. However, despite these early attempts at unification, England was still a patchwork quilt of different territories ruled by local lords. A new chapter, the Norman Conquest. In 1066, the story of the British Kingdom took a dramatic turn with the Norman Conquest. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy in France, claimed the English throne. This claim was based on his distant kinship to Edward the Confessor, the childless King of England. When Edward died, the English nobility chose Harold Godwinson, a powerful earl, to be king instead of William. This sparked a conflict between William and Harold. On October 14, 1066, William's army met Harold's forces at the Battle of Hastings. After a hard-fought battle, Harold was killed and William the Conqueror was declared the winner. This victory marked a turning point in English history. William and his Norman followers took control of the government and the aristocracy of England. They introduced new systems of justice and governance, and they brought in Norman French as the language of the court. While the Anglo-Saxons continued to make up the majority of the population, the Normans dominated the ruling class. One of the most significant consequences of the Norman conquest was the introduction of a more centralized monarchy. Previously, England had been governed by a council of nobles, but after 1066, the king's power increased significantly. The English monarchy was now more absolute, and the king was seen as the supreme authority in the land. North of the border, the Kingdom of Scotland. While all of this was happening in England, just north of the border, another kingdom was emerging, the Kingdom of Scotland. The early inhabitants of Scotland were the Picts, the Britons, and the Gaels. These people spoke Gaelic languages and had their own distinct cultures. Over the centuries, the Gaelic peoples were joined by Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and Norsemen who added to the cultural mix of Scotland. The Kingdom of Scotland was often in conflict with the English kingdoms to the south. Battles and raids along the border were common, but so were royal marriages aimed at maintaining peace. Malcolm III of Scotland married King Stephen of England's daughter in 1072. Their son, Duncan II, inherited both the Scottish and English crowns. However, after Duncan's murder, Stephen's widow, Empress Matilda, went to war with King David the Fairn of Scotland to secure her son's right to the throne. Although the Scots were defeated, the struggle for the English throne continued for years. Unification, the union of the crowns. Finally, in 1603, the two kingdoms of England and Scotland were united under one monarch, marking a significant step towards the formation of the British Kingdom. At this point, however, it's crucial to remember that although one person sat on both thrones, England and Scotland remained separate legal entities with their own parliaments and laws. The story of this union begins with Queen Elizabeth I, the last Tudor monarch. She reigned over England from 1558 to 1603. Elizabeth never married and had no children. As she approached the end of her life, the question of who would succeed her became a pressing issue. There were several contenders, but the English nobility ultimately decided to offer the crown to Elizabeth's distant cousin, James Stuart, who was the King of Scotland. This decision was driven by a desire to maintain Protestant control of the Church of England, which Elizabeth had helped to establish. James Stuart, who became James VI of England, was crowned King of England in 1603. This event is now known as the Union of the Crowns. With James sitting on both the Scottish and English thrones, hopes for a full political union between the two kingdoms grew. However, this was a slow process that took another 200 years to accomplish. The path to unity, the Acts of Union. Throughout the 17th and early 18th centuries, efforts were made to bring about a full political union between England and Scotland. These efforts were driven by various factors, including a desire to strengthen the monarchy, promote economic cooperation, and above all, to end the long-running conflict between the two kingdoms. Finally, in 1707, the Acts of Union were passed by the English and Scottish parliaments, officially creating the Kingdom of Great Britain. This historic event can be attributed to several key factors. One significant driver was the Anglo-French rivalry, which had deep economic and political roots. England and France had been at odds for centuries, competing for power, wealth, and global influence. This rivalry intensified during the War of the Spanish Succession, in which England and France were on opposing sides. The conflict raised the stakes for both nations and highlighted the importance of unity and stability within each kingdom. Another crucial factor was the economic complementarity between England and Scotland. While England had a thriving commercial and industrial sector, Scotland's economy was strong in agriculture and manufacturing. The union promised to open up new markets and opportunities for trade, benefiting both kingdoms. Additionally, the personal union of the crowns had already fostered closer ties between England and Scotland, laying some groundwork for the Acts of Union. However, it was the threat of a Habsburg dynasty taking the English throne that served as the catalyst for the final push toward unity. When Queen Anne, the last Stuart monarch, died without any surviving children in 1714, the question arose as to who would succeed her. The English nobility feared that a Habsburg would inherit the throne and potentially alter the religious balance of power in England. This concern spurred them to seek a permanent solution, leading to the passage of the Acts of Union. Under the terms of the Acts of Union, the parliaments, governments, and judiciaries of England and Scotland were merged into those of Great Britain. The two kingdoms were united in a single political entity, sharing one monarch, one set of laws, and one national identity. The union was not without its challenges. There were those in Scotland who felt that their interests would be better served by remaining independent, and there were also political factions in England that opposed the union with Scotland. However, the desire for greater stability, economic growth, and the fear of foreign influence ultimately led to the passage of the Acts of Union. The union of the two kingdoms in 1707 is considered a pivotal moment in British history. It laid the foundation for the emergence of the United Kingdom as a major global power. The Kingdom of Great Britain was soon to embark on a period of significant expansion, colonialism, and political change that would eventually lead to the creation of the British Empire. Great Britain and Ireland, the final step. Later in 1801, Great Britain added Ireland to the mix, creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Ireland had been a part of the British Kingdom since 1541, when King Henry VIII of England declared himself the King of Ireland. However, the relationship between Britain and Ireland was complex and often fraught with tension. In 1922, most of Ireland gained independence, becoming the Irish Free State. 6 counties in the northeast, which had strong unionist sympathies, remained part of the United Kingdom. As a compromise, the official name of the state was changed from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This name has remained unchanged since. Today, the United Kingdom is a symbol of historical continuity and national identity. It represents a shared heritage and a sense of unity among the people of England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. If you enjoyed this video, check out the next one, which looks at the massive British Empire in even more detail. Thank you for watching.